All right, City fan. Once again, Pep Guardiola's team stepped onto the pitch and delivered a mix of emotions. The clash against Arsenal in London ended in a 1-all draw, a result that left a bitter taste, yet at the same time offered positive signs. The scoreline may not have been what was hoped for, but on the pitch, there were reasons for the supporters to believe that the side remained strong enough to fight at the highest level. The biggest news that allowed fans to breathe a sigh of relief was the return of two crucial figures, Rodri and John Stones. The Spanish midfielder, who had felt discomfort in his knee during the week and was doubtful until the referee's whistle, managed to play the full 90 minutes. His presence brought balance to the side and highlighted just how much his absence had weighed in recent matches. Stones, meanwhile, who had been out for a long spell recovering from a muscle injury, gained some minutes at the end and showed he is ready to be reintegrated gradually. The negative note of the afternoon was down to Nico O'Reilly. The young defender, only 20 years old, had been showing maturity in his performances, but was forced off in the final moments after a heavy collision. He hobbled off, treated by the medical staff, though with no signs of anything serious. Even so, the sight caused concern among those following his development closely, as he had been consolidating himself as a genuine option in the defensive line. The injury list, however, is still a heavy burden. Omar Marmoush, for example, has remained sidelined since the September international break. The Egyptian forward suffered ligament damage in his knee right at the start of the match against Burkina Faso, leaving the field on crutches with protective support. Guardiola, however, believes he could return before the next international break, which would be vital to give fresh energy to the attack. Another case is that of Ryan Cherki. After an exciting Premier League debut, where he made his mark, the Frenchman was struck down by a thigh injury that turned into a long absence. Back in August, Guardiola had estimated around 2 months out, meaning his return is close, though it still demands patience. Rayan Ait-Nouri, who had only just arrived before suffering an injury while on international duty, remains without a clear update on his progress in the medical department. Mateo Kovacic is also sorely missed. The Croatian has not played since undergoing Achilles tendon surgery just before the Club World Cup. The initial expectation was that he would be out until September or October, but there are rumors that his recovery process is ahead of schedule, increasing the chances of an earlier comeback. That would be a major boost, particularly given the demanding fixture list City are facing. Despite so many absentees, having Rodri and Stones back is a huge relief. The team gains solidity and can approach the run of matches with less vulnerability. Moreover, the depth of the squad should ensure City remain competitive until the others return. The question that lingers is whether this current group has enough consistency to challenge for both the Premier League and the Champions League simultaneously. Meanwhile, off the pitch, another development is attracting attention. The club are working to secure one of their brightest academy prospects, Devin Mukasa. The 18-year-old midfielder shone in last season's Under-18 campaign, racking up 16 goals and 15 assists in just 20 matches. Impressive numbers for a creative player, which immediately caught the eye of traditional clubs such as Ajax, Milan, and Bayern Munich. The board, however, are determined not to repeat past mistakes, such as Cole Palmer's departure to Chelsea. The plan is to offer a long-term contract, sending a clear message of trust and showing that Mukasa's pathway lies at the Etihad. He has already been included in Premier League and Champions League squads, in addition to featuring in development competitions like the EFL Trophy. Should he not secure consistent game time this season, there is the possibility of a loan move, something that could accelerate his growth, much like James McAtee's case. This policy of valuing the academy is not merely an administrative choice, but a clear signal to Europe's giants. Manchester City do not intend to lose their most valuable prospects. Oscar Bob, Rico Lewis, and Nico O'Reilly are recent examples of youngsters who signed early renewals and became guaranteed pieces for the future. Mukasa is next on the list, and the expectation is that Guardiola will also open space for him, since this season he has shown more willingness to trust in youth. After the draw against Arsenal, another point that sparked much debate was the tactical strategy adopted by Guardiola in the final minutes. Known for standing out with offensive play and ball possession, the manager surprised everyone by setting up the team in a 5-4-1 formation in the second half, trying to contain the opponent's momentum. For much of the time, the plan worked, but the defensive solidity was broken when Gabriel Martinelli scored the equalizer late on. In the post-match interview given to Sky Sports, Pep did not hold back from openly criticizing the fixture schedule. According to him, the marathon of commitments had compromised the players' performance, who arrived fatigued. He pointed out the recent sequence: a tough match against Napoli in the Champions League, only 1 day of recovery, and then immediately a 5-hour trip to London to face Arsenal. For the manager, it is impossible to maintain the same level of intensity with such a workload. These remarks, however, were not well received by everyone. Former player Chris Sutton, speaking on the BBC, mocked the stance, claiming that today's elite athletes are spoilt and have all the necessary conditions, unlike previous generations. The criticism, however, overlooks the fact that Guardiola has been dealing with many absentees and still had to field virtually the same starting core in 3 extremely demanding clashes against United, Napoli, and Arsenal. The physical pressure, combined with the injury list, made the complaint understandable. Even more so because, alongside Nico O'Reilly, the team also lost Abdulkadir Kusanov, who picked up an injury in the clash with the Gunners. Each week, the medical department seems to gain a new patient, and the feeling is that luck has not been on their side. Even so, Guardiola remains confident and shows conviction that, once everyone is available, the team will have the strength to bounce back and fight on all fronts. This episode also highlights a recurring debate in the Premier League: the intensity of the English calendar. Unlike other leagues, there is no winter break, and there are still domestic competitions such as the FA Cup and League Cup, which make the season even more demanding. For a club like City, competing in every possible tournament, managing the players' physical condition is almost as important as the tactical side. While the present requires immediate adjustments, the board is keeping a close eye on the future of the midfield. Rodri continues to be the heartbeat of the team, but last season already showed that, in the event of a long absence, the side struggles badly without him. Moreover, with the player approaching 30, it is natural for City to start planning for a long-term successor. In this context appears the name of Aleksandar Pavlović, a 21-year-old from Bayern Munich. Known for combining refined technique with good defensive reading and physical presence, he has qualities that appeal to Guardiola. The idea of preparing a successor gradually, while Rodri is still performing at a high level, seems to make sense to ensure a smooth transition in the future. The problem, however, is that Pavlović is under contract until 2029, and Bayern are not known for making negotiations easy, especially involving promising youngsters. Any attempt to prize him away from Munich would cost astronomical figures. Nevertheless, Manchester City have already shown on other occasions that they do not hesitate to open the checkbook when they believe they are investing in a strategic talent. The most recent example is the signing of Estevão Willian from Palmeiras, reinforcing the policy of securing players with great potential. The fans, of course, have already started to debate. Would Pavlović be the ideal successor to Rodri, or should the board explore other market options? While this discussion takes place off the pitch, on it Guardiola must deal with the immediate challenges. The recovery of players, intelligent rotation, and trust in academy youngsters will be fundamental to get through this turbulent period without losing competitiveness. This combination of difficulties and opportunities shows just how challenging City's current moment is, but also how full of possibilities. The draw against Arsenal, though frustrating, also revealed the team's ability to adapt, their resilience amid absences, and the confidence that, once the squad is complete, the potential will be even greater. For many analysts, the draw against Arsenal worked as a faithful snapshot of Manchester City's current moment. A powerful team, capable of competing even with significant absences, but one that has not yet managed to reach its best form this season. And this is not only down to physical fatigue or Guardiola's criticism of the calendar, but to a combination of factors involving the squad, the strategy, and the manager's choices. Rodri's return was celebrated as a genuine mid-season reinforcement. His presence is not merely symbolic. He is the key point of balance between defense and attack. Without him, City loses both the ability to protect the back line and the same fluidity when building play. That is why his injury last season sounded the maximum alarm for Guardiola and the board. It is no coincidence that planning for a successor is already underway. Stones, meanwhile, represents something different. His versatility, being able to play both as a center-back and as an additional option in midfield, allows Guardiola to create tactical variations. The simple fact of having him available again opens up new possibilities. In recent months, the manager has had to improvise and adapt defenders, something that limited his characteristic style of play. However, what worries supporters most is the string of injuries to new arrivals or youngsters who might have consolidated themselves. Marmoush, Cherki, and Ait Nouri arrived with expectations of immediate impact, but they have not yet managed to provide consistency. This generates a sense of frustration, not because their talent is in doubt, but because the lack of rhythm can hinder adaptation to the Premier League, a league famous for its intensity and constant physical clashes. Cherki, for instance, left a very strong impression in his debut with creative plays and a different vision of the game. However, the thigh injury cut his momentum, and now he will have to start again from scratch once he returns. Ait Nouri has not yet had enough time to show what he can bring, and Marmoush, who had shown offensive potential, will be remembered for the misfortune of an injury while on international duty. These are stories that show how football is sometimes decided by unpredictable details. It is in this scenario that the club's bet on youth players becomes even more relevant. The case of Devin Mukasa fits perfectly. His previous season with impressive numbers was no accident, and the board knows that losing such a talent to rivals would be a strategic mistake. More than protecting the present, City wants to build a solid foundation for the future. The message sent to clubs like Ajax, Milan, and Bayern is clear. The Etihad's jewels are not for sale. The situation is reminiscent of what happened with Cole Palmer, who left for Chelsea and is now an important player there. That episode served as a lesson for the club. This is why there is now a rush to secure long-term contracts for Oscar Bob, Rico Lewis, and now Mukasa. The goal is that when looking to the future, Guardiola and his successors have a core group formed at home, with identity and continuity. But it is not only the academy that is on the agenda. The board also needs to deal with the possible need for heavyweight reinforcements. The name of Pavlovic, as already mentioned, is just one example. City cannot run the risk of depending on only one key player like Rodri. The logic is clear. Investing now in youngsters who can take on leading roles in a few years ensures the cycle of victories is maintained. This long-term thinking is what sets Manchester City apart from many rivals. It is not just about signing ready-made stars, but about blending youth and experience, always ensuring a competitive squad. Guardiola knows he will not be in charge forever, but he wants to leave a legacy that goes beyond his own tenure. And that inevitably involves preparing the ground for the future. At the same time, the present demands immediate solutions. Supporters look at the Premier League table and realize that every point dropped could make a difference later on. The draw against Arsenal showed that, even under unfavorable conditions, City can still compete on equal terms with the main rivals. And when all the injured players return, the team's potential could be even greater. Thus, between important returns, young prospects being protected, and rumors of strategic reinforcements, Manchester City continues to write its story of overcoming obstacles. The draw against Arsenal was not the perfect result, but it showed that the team has the resilience to face any challenge. Now, everything depends on the recovery of the injured, the development of the youngsters, and Guardiola's ability to reinvent his strategy in each match. Citizen fan, what do you think of all this? Does City have enough depth in the squad to fight on all fronts, or does it still need more reinforcements to reach glory? Leave your opinion in the comments because your voice is part of this conversation. And don't forget, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss any updates about Manchester City, and you will keep following all the news from the most innovative club in modern football. Your participation is fundamental for us to continue bringing quality content. A big hug, and see you next time.